So I'm glad you made it in. I was telling everybody about an article that I read about, I think, a few weeks ago that you had written about being optimistic in South Africa and so forth. Do you want to take us through that specifically? Everybody is a bit negative, especially this week. We're still in lockdowns at different level. Businesses are closed and so forth. And you're always positive and you always have a nice perspective in terms of that. Can you take us through that specifically?
Yeah, look, firstly, I'm very sorry I'm late. My wife left me with the kids today, and I've been completely overwhelmed with homeschooling and everything, and I completely forgot about this whole thing. So, um, it's that article that I sent that went around. It's actually the third time that I've written something that went viral, and I asked myself, what is it? What is it that makes people want to forward something like that on and really enjoy it, etc. And I guess just the style. It's about firstly acknowledging the truth. And I think in this particular instance, South Africa is confronted with a massive health and economic crisis, and not sugarcoating that. I think a lot of people just pretend it's not really hectic, and this is extremely hectic. But you can't go too far down the rabbit hole of hectic. You've got to then kind of come up with a plausible story of how you get out of the rabbit hole, and how can there be some kind of light at the end of the tunnel. And that particular article is about BCG. I started out by kind of summarizing a whole lot of stuff that I'd read about the BCG vaccine for TB, which may, already still to this day, it looks like countries that have a universal policy for BCG vaccines have a much lower infection and death rate than countries that don't. The comparatives are the same. And South Africa has a universal policy, and so perhaps our viral rate will be less than other countries. But even so, the good news more comes out of what this does for the country. And a crisis like this, what it does for us politically and economically. And I think politically, funny enough, it's a great thing for Cyril Ramaphosa to have something for people to focus on, for people to highlight, for him to highlight his own leadership potential, for him to be able to push through the structural economic reform that the country needs, which would have been very difficult outside of an economic crisis. And also, we were downgraded, and we were going to be downgraded anyway, but now everyone's been downgraded, so it looks less bad. Yeah. Our country was, put in the doldrums.
Definitely, yeah. I think a lot of people look at South Africa alone, but it's all over the world. And I actually saw an argument on Facebook this morning where they were talking about how we are struggling in the lockdown and so forth. But if you look at Italy and America and all of those countries, they all have different lockdowns. It's not just in South Africa. I think sometimes we forget that other countries and people also go through things.
Yeah, you can't. There's a part of your brain, the left part of your brain says, more people will starve from an economic crisis than people would die of the virus. But then the right part of your brain says, you can't think like that. You can't just sacrifice diabetics and people with HIV and old people that are vulnerable simply to keep the economy going. You kind of have to think first about humans and second about money. And so we've had a lockdown, and we've actually run it quite responsibly. We've kept our infection rate very, very low. We've obviously got very big vulnerable communities in South Africa that don't seem to have been impacted. Hopefully, they're not going to be impacted.
Yeah.
And it has been a pretty serious thing. I mean, Boris Johnson almost died. He was in ICU. He's the Prime Minister of the UK. And if you look at how Donald Trump is handling this crisis in America, it's quite embarrassing. Australia's done a good job. New Zealand's done a good job. Those countries generally do good jobs, but there's 210 countries in the world, and SA is probably regarded in the top 10 right now in terms of how it's handled the crisis.
Definitely, I think our president handled it quite well. It's a tough decision to go on and say, let's put the country on lockdown, and obviously it's going to affect the economy going forward. What's your advice for business owners going through this specifically? Because I know you're a business owner yourself, Alan. So, what's the advice?
No, it's a disaster. I mean, I'm quite lucky. In my business, we sell broadband, so if there's one category that's doing okay, everyone still needs Wi-Fi. But if you're a tour operator, or if you're a hotel owner, or if you're a restaurant, it's really disastrous, and it's not going to get better anytime soon. Of course, there's a lot of sources of money for subsidies to pay your staff salaries, etc. I think a lot of landlords are being reasonable and giving people rental holidays, but there's no real. It's really very dire what's happening in that industry, and I mean, I guess it's the same advice for everybody. It doesn't matter what you're doing. You got to try to cut your costs as quickly as you possibly can. You've got to cancel your gym membership. You've got to take
Sorry,
care of
Alan.
it, Yeah.
I see quite a few people are saying they can't hear you properly. Is there any way you turn your mic volume up on your computer?
Okay, let me go see if there's a different mic here.
It should be under sound. It should be your output volume.
Yeah, it's at full max, eh?
How is it? And input volume as well.
Yeah, they're both at full.
Okay. I'll
Sorry.
see from my side what I can do here. So obviously there's no magic solution in terms of solving something currently where we are. What are you implementing in your business?
Well, our business, again, you put your staff first. You don't insist that people come to work. You try to protect them with their health. If we were economically hurt, then which we're not, fortunately, but then I would probably start with salary sacrifices rather than firing people. I mean, it's probably better. It's probably a lot better to keep your staff employed, even if at a 30% salary knock, than fire 30% of your salary of your staff.
Yes.
Look, it's also an opportunity for people to cull deadwood. Every business in the world ever has always accumulated deadwood along the way. So, if you're a ruthless businessman, you could do something like that. But I think, particularly in times like this, it's quite important to show you've got a heart and share the pain and just realize that it doesn't matter how well your business does if the country fails because of massive unemployment and hunger, then your business is screwed anyway. So we're all in this together. We've got to. We have to kind of somehow keep the country going and make sure people don't reach such a level of desperation that it all falls apart.
Definitely. In your article, you talk about Eskom. They can take a breather while essential maintenance and so forth is being done. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, that's been pretty lucky. I mean, if you think about how lucky we've been, firstly, the load shedding was with us, but the economic recession now has obviously taken about 20-30% off the load, so we don't have load shedding, which is great. I mean, I assume when the economy recovers, will we go back to that? But it does give Eskom a chance to maintain and fix all of this power stations. Other lucky things, I mean, thank goodness we've got Cyril Ramaphosa as our president and not Jacob Zuma or Donald Trump.
Yes.
And thank goodness the water crisis in Cape Town's finished. And there are like so many little things that could have really been. Thank goodness we've got through the big tourist season. If this had been in November and Cape Town, the Western Cape's tourist economy had been wiped out for its busy season, that would have been massive ramifications. So, in some ways, we've been extremely lucky. I guess now the real question is how well are we going to handle coming out of the lockdown, and how are we going to actually get the economy to recover? It wasn't exactly like we were pumping to start with, and how do we kind of get those jobs back into the system?
Definitely. I think a lot of people are worried that the lockdown will continue, and in between level 4 and level 5 specifically, and how will that survive? I take myself. I'm a shareholder in Bliss here in Port Elizabeth, and that's a hair salon. It's not going to be open till I think level 2 specifically, or even level 1. No one knows really. So what happens to all of that staff that they're in commissions every time when they cut someone's hair? What happens to any commission earner going forward?
Man, it's like being a restaurant owner, or a hotel owner or a tour operator. It's game over, If you don't have enough savings, it's game over. And I guess people are going to find out what happens then. I don't know what happens. That's never happened to me. But
I see Caroline saying here, she was optimistic and very impressed with Cyril until the cigarette debacle.
A lot of people seem to have seen that as the tipping point from competence to incompetence. I don't know. I think alcohol is also another big thing for people. But the president has much more information in his hands than I do, or you do, or anybody does, and it's an extremely complicated system. And there's also a parallel universe in country. We have a third world and we have a first world, and you have to have a policy that one size fits all. So it's very hard. I don't want to judge the guy because it's hard to put myself in his shoes and say I would do anything differently. I'm very grateful that Nkosazana Zuma is in his cabinet because she seems to be like a natural leader, and she seems to be making decisions which I find sometimes Cyril's Mr. Ramaphosa is a little bit more consensus driven, whereas Nkosazana Zuma is not afraid to make a call and make a decision and move us forward. So we're quite lucky about the cabinet, and some of the cabinet members are quite strong in stepping up to the plate. The other big thing here is everyone's moving online. Kids are going to start the acceleration towards online learning, online schooling, telecommuting. People are going to stay out of their cars. People are going to stay off the planes. Kids in rural, Eastern Cape don't have to rely on a doctor. Living in the Eastern Cape, you can have telemedicine. So those were all trends that were happening and the people had been resisting for years, and now it's all been accelerated. The longer the lockdown lasts, the more the behavioral change will be permanent, and we'll go towards an economy that's much more based on the internet.
Definitely. I think the way we do business will definitely change going forward. I also saw a podcast that Gareth Cliff put up over the weekend. Not sure if you listened to it at all, Alan.
I did see something about it, but I didn't listen, no.
So he was quite vocal about, obviously cigarettes being banned and saying to the president that we need to ease up and we need to look at things before people start turning against government going forward. Because the poor will get poorer and they can't keep on living like this. So it was quite a blunt statement in terms of you need to look at the people now before they start turning on you, because we know what's happened in Roman times. And that's what he referred to specifically, which was quite a bold statement to make in terms of that.
Yeah, look, do you think Ramaphosa is unaware of that?
No, probably not.
Do you think anybody in the cabinet is unaware of that?
No. I think they're quite aware.
Preaching to the converted,
Yeah.
And they know more than I know. What do I know about how hectic it is in a township? I've never been living in a township.
Yeah.
So our president knows. And that's why I say it's a very complicated situation. And for them to carry on the lockdown means they have access to information that we don't have, which shows them a worse scenario transitioning out. There's no other logical explanation, So you just, at some point, you just have to believe in your leaders,
Definitely, I completely agree with you. But let us say here, I must admit in the beginning it was easy to be optimistic, but over the past 5 weeks it's taken a toll, and I found it harder to pick myself up. I think going on into level 4 has helped, as we could get some winter goodies and of course comfort food, and will be some great help. I think the comfort food has probably been the thing that's affected people the most. It doesn't look like you've become a victim of that, Alan.
I'm blessed with a nice metabolism, but I would agree with her. I've also found myself getting a little bit depressed. I think it's more about the number of messages I get from people in need, and not just former domestic workers or golf caddies or things like that. Restaurant owners, sportsmen, people that earn a living on a sports field and don't get paid if they don't end up on the sports field, and you realize how dire the circumstances are for a lot of families. That is pretty real and pretty depressing. And so, I've had to kind of figure out my own logic for maintaining a sunny disposition and kind of not getting too freaked out about everything. And it all starts with, you have to decide for yourself whether you have options. You have to say to yourself, right, is South Africa going, is our country, is this the end? Is this literally the trigger that pushes us across the line to failed state mode? And, that's a very hard thing to answer, but let's just say it does. Well, what are your options? What are you going to do? Are you going to fly to Australia? You're going to fly to the UK? You're going to go to Zimbabwe? What are you going to do? I can tell you it's very expensive to leave this country and live anywhere else, unless you go to Zimbabwe. And even if you wanted to, Australia's unemployment has doubled in the last 3 months. In America, their jobless claims have gone from 282,000 in February to 3.8 million at the end of April. That's 13 times. That's a 13 times increase in jobless claims. So those countries aren't going to be welcoming families who are coming to take jobs from locals. So it's kind of, in a way, our borders are closed for the next year or 2 or 3 or 4. We don't really have an option. Once I realize in my head that there's no real plan B, it makes it a lot easier to realize that just not to think about it. I don't talk to my wife about it. My wife also gets a little bit nervous about this stuff, and we talk about it, and we're like, there's no plan B. There's only plan A. Plan A is stay here, figure it out, and then figure out how you make it work here, rather than figure out how you get out of here.
Definitely.
And then it's about mental tricks about trying to maintain hope and belief. And, it's so easy to have faith in evidence. I mean, it's easy to be optimistic when you can see the path ahead and you know exactly how you're going to get there. So it takes a lot more, takes a lot more discipline in a way to remain optimistic when you really can't see the light at the end of the tunnel and you can't be sure how you're going to get there.
Definitely. I think it's different from person to person with regards to what they see and, how to get through it. I see Caroline said here, so jobs will be lost. It feels like capitalism isn't going to recover. Time for universal basic income.
Yeah, that's UBI, universal basic income. It's been something that even Elon Musk has been punting that in the last few years. And they weren't punting it because of the coronavirus. They were punting it because they said machines and software were going to take all the jobs. And they're not going to be replaced. I mean, those jobs won't, if you were, driving a car before and then suddenly the car drives itself, there's not going to be suddenly a new job for that driver. So UBI is this kind of panacea that's been preached for about 10 years now for the new economy. And I think, the coronavirus is accelerating that now. What the real blessing one of the great blessings of our country is that we're not a capitalist economy. And also, we're not a communist economy. We're not America and we're not China.
Yes.
We have both. We've got capitalists in our cabinet and we've got dyed-in-the-wool communists in our cabinet. So what that means is we've got people who control the finances, that understand taxes, and they understand businesses pay taxes, and those taxes are used to pay salaries and build bridges and roads. But on the other hand, there are people in the government that understand that the government has a responsibility to make sure that everybody has access to healthcare, education, roads, even if they don't have a job. Like in America, if you don't have a job, the assumption is that you must just die. And we've got this balance, and we already have a form of UBI. I mean, that's what the SASSA grants are. We give money to single mothers, we give money to the elderly, to the disabled. It's not a far stretch of the imagination to make money available to everybody who's unemployed. It's just a question of how you fund that. I mean, that's a different thing altogether, but that's a question every country in the world has to face. At least psychologically, our country's comfortable with this idea that, if you pay taxes, some of your taxes go towards those who don't have a job.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think we've got the best of both worlds if you look at that specifically. I see Andrew is saying here, being in the conference industry, we're looking at a long recovery, and we also are faced with whether conferences will continue as usual and go more online, hoping for the former.
Yeah,
what do you think?
He would know better than me. I'm sure it'll go back to the former. I mean, everyone, if anything, I know a lot of people will start telecommuting, but this lack of physical contact is going to remind everybody again how important physical contact is when it comes to sales and building relationships and serendipity meeting of people. I mean, how can you randomly meet a new supplier or a new customer on Zoom? It's never going to happen on Zoom. You have to physically be in a room and bump into someone over a cup of coffee. So it'll all come back. It's just going to take a while.
It was quite interesting last night on Carte Blanche. They were talking about technology where people walk into like a virtual conference room and you see all of the seats and you like an avatar that walks in and you go and sit at the chair and you see all the speakers like almost like a real conference specifically. And you also wonder, are we going to go to that specifically? Am I going to sit here at home with that goggles on and join a virtual conference room? And that would be quite interesting to see how things happen. Especially no one knows how long this is going to go on, but it will also save cost in terms of conferences. I think, if we can all join a virtual conference room and you see the setup and it looks brilliant, then maybe that's an option. Alan, so take me through, what are you busy with in terms of business currently? I know a few years ago, I think 4 or 5 years ago, we had you at the British Hotel where we spoke about what you were busy with and where you were going and so forth. Where are you at the moment? Are you Port Elizabeth, Cape Town, Stellenbosch?
I live in Stellenbosch, and most of my energy has been involved in a business called Hero Tel, which does
Yeah.
broadband all over the country, kind of rural broadband to your home, wireless and fiber. I've got a little business called, I will involve a little bit with the business called namola.com. It does emergency response services, so kind of replacing 10111. So I'm lucky that the one or two paths we've chosen are kind of benefiting from this new kind of paradigm of everything being online and everything being by your phone. But to
Yes.
be honest, the lockdown has given me a chance to reflect on my own life and think about where I want to put my energy. And about 10 years ago, I already redesigned my life in such a way that I could make sure that my energy goes towards bridging the digital divide. That finally realizing that there's so many people in South Africa that don't have the same opportunities that my children have, and it's not because they're poor per se; it's because they literally don't have access to opportunity, and a lot of that opportunity is available on the internet. So, my real passion and mission in life is, getting everybody in South Africa on the internet in an affordable way. And I'm involved with a non-profit called Project Isizwe. So, and I think going forward, much more of my energy is going to go back into that.
You've provided internet for quite a few areas around South Africa, and just take us through it. It's a person in an area where you focus on, and then they can just log on and use the internet for free.
Yeah, it's that simple, man. We roll out public free Wi-Fi with no username, no password, no advertising. It doesn't
Yes.
require a PhD to figure out how to get in there.
Yeah.
We did a big project in Pretoria. We now do projects in Mpumalanga with the coal mines. So Glencore sponsors public free Wi-Fi for its coal mining communities. We do a project out in Northern Cape for the independent power producers out there, where they fund public free Wi-Fi for the communities around their solar and wind farms. We're actually looking at doing it for tribes around certain lodges in Kruger Park. We've done some stuff in Botshabelo and Free State. So it's all kind of innovative ways of trying to bring free internet into poor communities in a sustainable way.
Yes. No, and it's changing, and like you said, providing internet to people that can't afford it and just desperately needs it.
Yeah.
So, anything next for you? Obviously, you're planning on providing more internet to people, like you've said, through your non-profit. Is there anything big that you're also planning during this lockdown period, now that you're thinking of what you want to do, Alan?
Well, I think getting every single person in South Africa onto free internet is pretty big. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna focus on that for the next 30 years, and
Awesome.
I'll let you know how it goes. I mean, if I can get across that line, then I'll figure out what to do next. Yeah.
Cool, perfect. Any last advice for anybody that's joining in that wants to be an entrepreneur, wants to go follow their heart specifically, and have ideas like you have? Because you're an entrepreneur, you've got an idea, you followed through with your idea, which I'm sure must have been difficult. I'm sure a lot of people laughed at you when you went to them and said, "I want to provide free internet for people," and they didn't see how they're going to make the money out of it. But you had the vision and you push through. So what advice would you have for an entrepreneur?
I guess life advice is the same as entrepreneur advice. I mean, the first step you've got to do, you've got to find the right person to get married to, and then you must get married. You mustn't spend your life alone. Your life partner is going to make a big difference in your life. Of course, you could marry the wrong person, which is a disaster. And then, that's why it's important to marry young, so that you can get divorced young and fix that mistake quickly. As soon as you've kind of found the right partner in life, I think things get a lot easier. And just generally speaking, let's just think about South Africa. I mean, I know our government has made some mistakes, and not just in this crisis, but over the last 10 years. But every country in the world has had leadership that is not flawless. I mean, just the Prime Minister of the UK, I mean, Boris Johnson, he was telling people in March that he's going to keep shaking hands, and in April he was in the ICU, almost dead. If we open up a debate between the past and the present, then we past and the present, then we lose the future. And we've got to let go of all of this pettiness, especially now. We've got a common enemy. The whole country now is fighting the corona crisis. Let go of the racial stuff and let go of this demanding justice for the Guptas and prison for Marcus Jooste And all of that stuff's still going to be there when this crisis is finished. But we're not going to be able to get to the end of this crisis if we don't focus. We have to survive. And in order to survive, we must focus. And to do that, it's the same for businessmen and entrepreneurs. The way you do it is you just take every day as it comes. You keep taking a step forward, even though you don't know where you're going. You never give up. Doesn't matter how hopeless things get, and you never let despair and fear overcome you. At the moment in South Africa, what we've got to do is we've got to help the government follow the rules as much as we can. In my case, I try to help small businesses by buying vouchers in advance, and if people can ask me for money, I try to help them if I can. And that's the way, in business as well as the country, you can kind of go forward. You just realize that you're not an island. No one is an island. We're all in it together. And if we stick together, then we can win.
Awesome. Alan, thank you so much for the advice, and thanks for joining us today. From your side and Stellenbosch as well. It was nice chatting to you a few years ago and getting your perspective. And also when we see your articles going viral and the positivity that you have, it's just nice to connect with you.
Thank you, Neil. I appreciate the invitation.
Awesome. Well, you must have a good day, and all the best. Thanks, Alan.
All the best.
You too. Bye-bye.